It was Christmas morning, and the room smelled like pine, cinnamon, and betrayal. My sister's eyes were wide with greed, and my parents' smiles were sharp, almost cruel. "You don't deserve this," my sister hissed. "I deserve it more." I froze. $24 million. My family, demanding it, like I owed them everything. Little did they know, what came next would change everything forever. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or made to feel powerless by someone you trusted, hit that subscribe button now. Like this video and stay until the end. Because this story isn't just about revenge, it's about justice. Served perfectly. And trust me, you'll feel every twist of it. I had always been the quiet one in my family. The one who never argued, never caused trouble. The one who quietly watched my siblings take the spotlight while I stayed in the shadows. But that morning, I realized shadows had their advantages. It started like any Christmas morning. The tree was lit, stockings were hung, and the smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls filled the air. My sister, Jenna, flitted around like a whirlwind, her designer sweater slightly askew, but her eyes, those eyes were sharp, predatory. "You're hiding something from us," she said suddenly, plopping onto the couch across from me. "Something big, and you know it." I laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, Jenna. It's Christmas. Can't we just enjoy the day?" But she wasn't done. "Don't lie. I know about the money. The $24 million. You've been keeping it from us. And you should be giving it to me. I deserve it more than you." For a moment, I thought she was joking, but then I saw my parents exchanging a look that made my stomach drop. My mother smiled too tight, too forced. "She's right," my father said casually, as if this were normal. "You've had your fun with that money. Maybe it's time to share." Share. My family, who had laughed at me for years for choosing a modest career, for being practical, for not chasing the flashy lifestyle they deemed worthy. They were suddenly entitled to my hard-earned fortune. I could feel the blood rush to my ears. My hands itched. Not to hit, but to do something smarter. Something that would make them realize that greed, real, ugly greed, always comes with a price. I took a slow, measured breath. Inside, my mind was racing, not out of panic, but calculation. I had always been underestimated. Even when I built my career from scratch, when I turned my small startup into a multi-million-dollar empire, they never believed in me. Now, they thought they could just step in and take what I had worked for. Not a chance. I smiled, calmly, like nothing had happened. "I'll consider it," I said, letting the words hang in the air. They beamed, their victory palpable. I could almost hear the gears turning in Jenna's mind, already imagining her life as if my money was hers. That was the moment I decided it. They needed a lesson, a memory burned into their bones that would make them think twice before trying something like this again. And I had just a plan. First, I set the stage. I called a family lawyer I trusted implicitly. I explained the situation, that my family had discovered the fortune and were pressing for a share. The lawyer, after a long pause, chuckled quietly. "Sounds like a story waiting to unfold. Let's make sure you stay untouchable." Then came the psychological play. I began to plant small seeds, casual mentions of offshore accounts, of investments that required legal scrutiny, of complications that made the money inaccessible. Every time Jenna brought it up, I smiled sweetly and shook my head. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." The frustration in her eyes was delicious. My parents, too, started to grow impatient, their polite smiles slipping into thinly veiled irritation. I could see the entitlement eating away at them. Every time they tried to manipulate me, I just nodded, let them stew in their own assumptions. Christmas dinner was the peak of it. The table was lavish turkey, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, desserts that made the house smell heavenly, but all I could hear was the quiet hiss of tension. Jenna kept glancing at my plate, at my glass, at me. My father cleared his throat, trying to sound casual. "So, have you thought more about sharing your fortune?" I placed my fork down slowly. My movements were deliberate, calm. I looked at each of them in turn. "Actually," I said softly, "I've decided. I'm going to give it away. But not to you." They blinked. The room went quiet. Even the ticking of the clock seemed louder. "To whom?" Jenna demanded, her voice sharp. "To a charity that helps children and families in need," I said, my smile serene. They'll get everything, every last penny. My sister's face went white. My parents' jaws tightened. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of my decision settle in. Then came the real twist. A week later, I made it official. The $24 million was transferred, documented and public. Not only had I ensured it would never benefit my greedy family, but I had also made sure it was known publicly. Every news outlet, every social media account, every notification confirmed it. My fortune had gone to those who deserved it, not the people who thought they did. The reactions were priceless. Jenna tried to plead, to argue, to make me feel guilty, but it was too late. The legal documentation, the charitable announcements, the public records, all of it unassailable. I watched as her entitlement turned into disbelief, frustration, and finally, shame. My parents tried to lecture me, to twist the narrative, to make me feel like the villain, but I had something they never had: proof, precision, and principle. Every attempt they made to manipulate or guilt me fell flat. I was untouchable, calm, liberated. And in that liberation, I found something else. Joy. Not the joy of wealth, I had already had that, but the joy of justice. Of finally asserting my worth against the people who had always undervalued me. Of proving quietly but emphatically that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. The best part? Seeing their faces when the news went public. My sister, once full of confidence and greed, now shrinking into herself, avoiding eye contact. Her social media posts suddenly filled with excuses and half apologies to people outside the family. My parents, who had always assumed their authority gave them entitlement, now floundering, realizing that their manipulation had failed spectacularly. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The satisfaction came in the quiet, the certainty, the knowledge that I had outsmarted them without stooping to their level. Their own greed and entitlement had been their undoing. I simply gave them a mirror, and they saw themselves reflected back in all its ugliness. And yes, Christmas was sweeter than ever that year. Not because of gifts, not because of money, but because I had finally drawn a line. And everyone, myself included, knew exactly where it stood. What this taught me, I told myself later, is that family isn't always about love. Sometimes it's about boundaries and knowing when to defend your worth. Justice isn't about revenge, it's about making sure fairness prevails. And when you act with clarity and principle, the universe has a way of rewarding you. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, subscribe, and share it. Comment below, what would you do if your family tried to take your fortune? Have you ever witnessed a revenge story where justice was served perfectly? I'd love to hear your experiences. And remember, sometimes the sweetest victories are the quietest ones.